Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 meeting to order at 9 a.m. At this time, let's do the, the roll call, okay?
Okay. Director Balin?
Here.
Director Boatwright?
Here.
Director Kearns?
Here.
Director Murphy?
Here.
Director Ringen?
Here.
Okay, all five are present.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, Director Boatwright, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so with public comments, we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Person speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. At this time, Corey, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board?
Not at the moment.
Okay, and I see no hands up in the public, so that will close our public comment, and we will go to the consent calendar. And Melissa, will you please read the two items?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of September 27th, 2022. Item number 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director statement of meetings attended and or travel expenses and claim summary for September 2022.
Thank you. Is there any director who would like to comment on both of these items? Okay, Director Murphy? No? We're all good? All right, is there any public that wishes to comment on these items?
Not on my end.
Okay, seeing none in the building, then we will just move towards a motion. And a second.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, Melissa, did you get that? Director Kearns, okay. Any further discussion? All right, Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Kearns?
Aye.
Director Ringen?
Yes.
Director Murphy?
Aye.
Director Boatwright?
Aye.
Director Balin?
Aye,
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
thank you. All right, so our next item is regular business. Melissa, will you please read the item?
Okay, item number 3, water supply update.
I'm here, thank you. Glenn Nunley Engineering, okay. So the video's on and
There you go.
They're seeing that.
they're seeing it, they're seeing the slideshow, okay. We get this, a little different was, how long ago? We did it 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, here's a water supply update for where we stand today, October 11th. This is a little different time of year because I don't have a lot to share in terms of snow. But I can kind of tell you what we do know in terms of reservoir levels and maybe a little bit of what we just have gone through. So we're really normal right now. I've heard a couple of people say, "Oh my gosh, the reservoirs are so low and looking low." They're normal. This is how the reservoirs are normally operated. But I get it because the rest of the state and the western states are experiencing quite a bit of drought. And so I don't want to discount that, but we're sitting really in kind of a normal position right now. You know, that can change, so we need to watch that. Flow readings are normal. In fact, the flow readings out of the reservoir in the main Tuolumne Canal are a little about 5% lower this year than last year. Although last year I think was a little more of a spike, was up, and then we're more like we were in 2020. So I think we're back in a normal flow. excuse me, our treated water production, our customer use was down about 10% for June through September, which is pretty interesting. People responded, and our customer water use is, that's very, I don't want to say reasonable, but that was a pretty big hit. And this is relative to 2021. So a lot of the water use reduction that comes down from the state typically looks at another year like 2013. And to go only back 1 year, we just keep reducing and reducing. So this is actually very commendable. I think in other parts of that are improvements to our distribution system as well. So we're getting more and more efficient. This is looking good. And the other piece of it that we're really facing right now is the outlook. And so a lot of the planning I do is I really kind of look at what's our worst case, what might we face. It's really sort of speculative, but you really got to plan for dry years. And then when things get better, then you're okay. So that's kind of where we're at. It's going to be the next slide.
I just want to make a question or something. You said, you hear people talking about how low the reservoir levels are. This is really for the general audience that might be listening. I think it's important to understand what reservoirs we're talking about, right? You're talking about our local reservoirs upstream of us, Lyons and Pinecrest, right? Versus Maloney's, Don Pedro, to the mass population. Those look drastically low, and they are. So just making a distinction between what reservoirs we're talking about.
Exactly. Great segue. So the next slide, I think, is the map of where these reservoirs are. Yeah, I think a really good point. So we're up above Maloney's and Pedro, and if you can go all the way up to Pinecrest, and you look at the watershed above Pinecrest, we have about 27 square miles above Pinecrest, and then also kind of north of that is about 17 square miles of watershed to Heron Creek. That's above the town of Strawberry, and about half of that part of the watershed is above 8,000 feet in elevation. So it's a good, strong snow capture and hold watershed. And then there's another, what's it say on my slide? 67. Okay, 67 square miles. I think that's total watershed area, because there's another lower elevation area above the Lyons. So that picks up a lot of side inflow and inflow that brings in water into Lyons as well. So as we start getting precipitation through now, in fact, and probably the end of October, let's hope we get some weather by Halloween, we'll start seeing side inflow, and then the whole cycle starts again where we're actually getting water from the natural flow of the river, not just reservoir storage that takes place. But that's a good point. This is all, we're all up above those big reservoirs. And then they're small. We get about 100,000 acre feet of flow through Lyons, and the draft that we have is typically about 16,000 acre feet. So you want to see around 20,000 acre feet of flow. So we can see a very low amount of flow through the river and have enough water supply. I don't wish for that, but we can get by. So next slide, I can tell you what I do know. So this is just a simple graph of Pinecrest. We're a little over 8,000 acre feet now. I don't pay much attention to that. I know by the end of the year, we're going to have about 4,500 acre feet of storage in Pinecrest. It'll drop. I don't know what path it'll take, but very, very likely we will have Pinecrest fill and spill sometime by May or June. And that's what the graph shows. And so I don't really know much more than that. We're looking at 3 months. That's the current plan. And I have a high level of certainty that we'll have 4,500 in Pinecrest. And that's not a bad amount of water from a planning standpoint. We'll be working closely with PG in the months as we lead up to this and how water is used. So the next slide is Lyons. And so the top line, the darker line, the darker bars are what I do know Lyons will do. It'll creep up because we're drafting water from Pinecrest into Lyons, and we'll end up at about 2,500 acre feet at the end of the calendar year. So that's a pretty good start between what's in Pinecrest and what's in Lyons. And then we sit and wait for the rain and snow and that accretion flow into Lyons Reservoir. The path that I show is sort of a dry year planning. If we have something like 2014 where it sort of stopped raining until February and March, it makes us a bit nervous. There's enough storage in Lyons Reservoir to carry us through till about April. But we're gonna wanna see some rain and snow prior to that. So you'll be hearing from us if that happens. And so that lighter colored bars is the drawdown. That's really kind of demand on Lyons as we go through. And that's a pretty typical demand. Next slide. So I don't know what the snow is gonna happen this year, but the taller bars, that's kind of an average snowfall generally in a watershed. And there's 4 different stations that I look at, snow stations to gauge that. And the darker bars on the interior of that's about where it would happen in 2014. And we could even get by with a little less water than that. The main issue with that is planning. If we front load this and get all the rain and snow like we had last year, even though how dry it was last year, it was really nice. We got it all in December. So bam, check box, we're covered for the year. Even though it stopped raining and snowing for the most part, we still had enough. We were sure that things would fill and spill. And so I would much rather see it front loaded, but this is a general pattern. If we get snow in that lower range, then we're filled. I think for the rest of California, they'd like to see a lot more than that. And with that, we monitor weather forecasts, and it's just hard to know more than a couple of weeks out. There's a La Nina in effect through the first part of next year. I've read off of the National Weather Service. It's hard to correlate that to our region. We're kind of in the center, so it really doesn't say one way or another if it's going to be wet or dry in our site. That's going to actually, I think, be less favored by the time you get past January. And so but we just wait and see. So I'm not the meteorologist at all. I write down how much snow we got after it's fallen.
You deal in facts.
I deal in facts. I really don't.
What's the Pinecrest elevation currently?
Oh, it's like 11,000 something. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're end of October should be about 8,000 storage. I don't know the elevation though.
Okay.
I
was up there the other day and it's down, of course. And I was
Yeah.
just curious where it was at, so.
Right. Yeah, I switch back and forth. So Lyons Reservoir, I'm always talking storage. And in Pinecrest, I talk storage unless we're near Labor Day, and we're watching elevation near Labor Day. So now it's storage. But yeah, it'll drop down. So in fact, 4,500, they have a regulatory limit of 3,500 that it must maintain by the end of the calendar year, and then they can drop it further from there. And what they would do is if you have snow, the money in the bank, as it were, then yeah, go ahead and drop the reservoir down, knowing that it will refill. That's a common practice at Pinecrest.
So, how much are you watching, studying atmospheric rivers, and what effect do those have on the operation of the reservoirs?
I don't, that's not been much in my sort of wheelhouse with other workloads and assignments. But what I have looked at, and we've been kind of an ongoing look at what's going to be the climate change impacts on our little watershed. And so I read through, there's some studies through out of UCLA. I know working with a hydrologist consultant we have from before, there is analysis that can be run that looks at a gridded, you take our watershed and you can grid it up into about 5 or 7 different grids, and they assign a reduced snow and runoff factor for those areas to look at climate change. What I do know, just sort of off the cuff, is I know the watershed to Pinecrest is flashy, so it's a lot of granite. So if you do get more storms, even thunder showers, that are more liquid precipitation, that's gonna tend to hit the reservoir rather than soak into a forested grove. And so if you have a big atmospheric river, they would operate the reservoirs just to open up their spillways as wide open as they can and let it flow. That's all the facilities can do. And in that case, Pinecrest would go to, here we go again now, elevation of 5611, where 5617 is full. So it would maintain a 5611 elevation, and it could pass some level of storm event. And through the Department of Dam Safety and things like that, the PG&E has run lots of analysis on passing big storms. So if you had a big AR, that's sort of unusual in that respect.
Yeah, several years ago, at an aqua thing, I took a class talk, whatever you want to call it, on atmospheric rivers, and they were at that time just working on some method to be able to predict when they were going to occur by the amount of evaporation out in the ocean in a certain area, and they were working on trying to, so that they could plan for this, because there's some dams that can get overspilled, and then you've got a real problem. And so I was just wondering if that was in our situation up here, and I see that it probably isn't, at least for now.
Right. I would say I think that analysis would apply more to like a big, large rim dam like Oroville or Maloney's, where I know one of the concepts they're looking at is holding back more open storage for floods. And so if you can hold the reservoir full, because we're in such a drought and climate change, but you need to have open space for floods, if you can predict a big AR, say a week or so, a couple of weeks in advance, then you can hold back storage because it might be dry, but then release that quickly to make the storage for capture later. Yeah, and now in our case up here, I don't think we'd really operate those little reservoirs in that way. But that's, yeah, something California we want to be looking at.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you have a computer model that looks at the watershed as far as how it's loaded with snow and the potential for occurrence of, tropical, how much of an impact can our watershed handle as far as the infrastructure? If we see something like what happened in Yellowstone or Kentucky, where you get, 6 to 12 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, that you've already got, snowbank up there, can our infrastructure handle it?
Right. Actually, I think there's one more slide, but I'll answer your. No, that's okay. Okay. I'll come back to this one. But there's studies on the HMR 58 that has new storm amount and intensity charts that says, especially by month. So we have a October and April month, for example, that may impact us. We want to have Phoenix Reservoir full in October to handle the ditch outage, for example. And so a new analysis and charts may say just what you just said. What if you had a big storm event? Look at your watershed. Is your spillway and your reservoir large enough to pass that flow? And in that particular event, in my opinion, I probably shouldn't have an opinion, but the amount of flow is beyond what you normally would even see in peak flows on a Stanislaus Road. And so And so can your infrastructure handle it? Well, in that particular case, probably not, but it's something that is, I don't want to say 1 in 1,000-year event or some rare thing. In terms of lions and pinecrest, that I've read through some documents, they can handle flows that reach near those levels. I don't know for sure how it is, but in my opinion, if we're experiencing those kinds of flows, there's other issues that we're all facing with floods of that nature. I know the facilities at Pinecrest and Lyons, the spillways are designed, you open up, you can get your flashboards open, and then they just let very large amounts of flow pass through. There's nothing more that can be done on those facilities except to open it up and here comes the storm. And now, yeah, a rain on snow event could be pretty catastrophic because we might have, I don't know, 20,000 acre feet of expected runoff and then have a big warm storm and it all comes down in a few days. That's gonna do some damage. And those aren't anything that I
Sorry.
firsthand knowledge and study and analyze. But I do know through there's the reservoirs at both Pinecrest and Lyons and our Phoenix are heavily regulated. So we're those kinds of analysis are taking place all the time to make sure those facilities can manage it.
We do have Director Burley with right here.
Oh, okay.
Get on to the next one.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Glenn, I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about the consultant and what they're like? Are you consulting with them periodically, or was it kind of a one-off thing to get an idea of kind of what we'll be looking towards in the future? And who are we using for that?
So we were using a consultant that we were using to look at hydrography for the FERC relicensing effort. And so we have just some preliminary runoff analysis and sort of what I call it a discount, but what kind of reduced runoff might we expect on a climate change? We have just some preliminary results we're still looking through.
Okay, do we have an ongoing relationship with them, or was that just something that was done as a one-time thing?
No, we have an ongoing relationship with them as long as, in fact, as far as I know, as long as we're keeping up with the FERC relicensing, that the hydrology and water balances become very important. So yes, we have a good, clean working relationship with them.
Cool, thank you. And who was that company?
They're called Western Hydrologics. They're based in Auburn.
Thank you.
So back to the slide. In fact, I think David, you had asked about the pan evaporation. So this is actually kind of interesting. I'm looking back in time now, but this year, this chart is looking at the evaporation rates from 2020, 2021, and 2022. And so this is one of the things I've been watching, because I know last year, the main canal, we needed more flow in the main canal, and not necessarily more demand was taking place. And so I think it's the middle bar is the 2021 that's more interesting to me. You can see how high it was throughout the entire year. Now this year, I think in August, we had the higher evaporations, and we had because we had such hot temperatures during the summer, which was kind of interesting. And so this is one of the things that I'm building now, is to be looking more at the temperatures and humidity, as well as this evaporation at the wastewater treatment plant in terms of impacts on our system. And yeah, when it's hot, we're gonna see more evaporation, and on not just in demand, which we know happens, but also in the system. And so at any rate, this is good information. I'm trying to keep this updated off of the QX or WX cycle.
Now, hey, Glenn, in 2021 for September, you've got a higher evaporation rate, if I'm seeing that right, 3/4 of an inch or so. Now, do you also track the temperature comparison on that to, yeah, I'm just kind of curious, with the heat wave that we've seen this September versus, well, I guess because of the rain we had in September. So that's what has offset that evaporation rate?
Yeah, it depends on where you're taking it. So that's where, this is at the regional plant. And so that's kind of one region. The temperatures, it's a good point. And I have temperatures going as well. But I'm taking temperatures more, I'm doing the Mount Elizabeth station, and then PG&E has some temperatures near Pinecrest. And so, but we have a station here now that we can, but we don't have a long history on it. And there's other stations, it sort of depends on where you want to go. I think the wastewater plant may not necessarily be representative of what's in a lot of the upper country. And so, but this is the pan evaporation. So this is the information I don't think I have anywhere else. In fact, I don't think New Maloney's is collecting the pan evaporation. So this is good information to have.
No, I really like that. I mean, that's good information there, but it seems like, there's a couple other variables that should, almost a graph line with the rate events and temperature swings intertwined with it.
Yeah, I agree. I need to look a little more carefully. There may be some anomalies or there may be some mistranscribing to look at. I know in August, for example, the humidity went up in both at Pinecrest and at Mount Elizabeth. We were having thunder showers in that time frame. So that would be one theory is when you have climate change, what's that going to impact? Well, we think this is going to be hotter and drier and no more snow. Well, maybe we're going to get more rain in the summer, like we see back east. Who knows?
I see Director Murphy's hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check that I'm understanding the what you have up. So it says the regional wastewater treatment plant, but is that at Quartz Reservoir that this is measured, or is it at the wastewater treatment plant?
It's actually at Sonora Regional.
Yeah, it's at the wastewater treatment plant, the Sonora Regional Plant, not at Quartz.
Okay, so where is that? I mean, I know the location of the regional treatment plant, but what are we? I don't totally understand where you're getting the inches per month at the.
So it's a very specialized piece of equipment. In fact, the Director Boatwright can describe it better than I can. But you look at you have a pan of water, and how much water is evaporating off of that pan, measured really directly, and that information then tells you how much water would you can correlate that to evaporation off of reservoirs, off of ditches, off of Phoenix. What kind of uptake might you have from evapotranspiration? And so that station is fairly rare because I know New Maloney's used to do it, but not a lot of meteorological stations have a pan evaporation measurement, and that gives you one more bit of data on top of temperature, on top of humidity. That kind of tells you meteorologically what's going on in your area.
So how do you so this is in Sonora, right? Which is at a different elevation and different conditions than Pinecrest. How do you utilize this pan test in Sonora? Do you run it through an algorithm, or how does this relate to what's happening at Pinecrest?
You would estimate that. In Pinecrest, you would probably do more of a water balance. So how much water is flowing through, reservoir level drops, the flow in the river, and you look at that over a period of a few months. And then you can begin to get an estimate or a measure of evaporation, kind of total environmental losses, you might say, out of say Pinecrest. You get seepage, you got other uses. Pinecrest draws water And most of that's gonna come from evaporation. And so each year, that can be looked at in a number of ways. This is just one more piece of information you can use to correlate. If it's gonna be hot, a lot of evaporation in Sonora, then it's probably happening a little bit in Pinecrest. Now, it's not perfect, but that's the kind of thing you need to do when you're looking at all sort of snow and temperature and humidity stations. You can't cover an area perfectly with an even grid. And this is just one bit of information we can use to look at, and it's really after the fact too. This is what occurred over the last 3 years. It's not, I can't predict anything. What will pan evaporation do in the next month? I don't know. Again, I write it down after it's been measured, but hopefully that answers your question.
Sort of. So like when we're talking about ditch evaporation and stuff, is this a piece of the puzzle that we're using for estimating ditch evaporation, and kind of is it the main thing, or is there a whole bunch of other factors that you're putting in to understand how much we're losing through the open system?
This would be just one piece of it. There's flow data, there's other temperature data, there's humidity data that we can monitor, and this is just one more piece of measurement that we can look at.
Cool. And we're then this is just kind of if any public is watching this, and also just want to make sure that I'm understanding it fully, because I share this stuff with my students as well. When we're looking at, let's say, reservoir evaporation or ditch evaporation, because we're getting the water from PG&E, we know how much we're putting in. Is that correct?
Yes.
The system. And then we're also monitoring how much is going out of those systems, either through, through ratepayers' uptakes, and also from releases into streams and things like that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so by factoring those pieces, then you know how much was lost within that. And then this is one of the pieces that helps us know how that is lost, if it's through evaporation or leakage or whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure I'm understanding it. Thank you.
I have a question. It's been said that Maloney's evaporates 42,000 acre feet a year. Can you substantiate that?
I would have to look that up. I do know they publish an evaporation rate. You can go onto the website and you can see the rates. 450 cubic feet per second. Like sticks in my head as in one of the hot summers. I was looking back through the data, and so as a flow rate, I know through a hot summer. Now that would be probably peak during day, and then I don't know for how long. We run some calculation, but 42,000. So you have 2.4 million acre feet. The evaporation is going to be based on your area of exposure, and I'm sure it'll change, but it's a big reservoir, so it could evaporate a lot.
Is PG&E also measuring Pinecrest also? Because in the old days it would draw down, but now we're keeping a larger surface area full through sustained heat waves. Is anybody measuring the amount of evaporation? Because those are very exposed surfaces.
Yeah, PG&E can do that. I don't know for sure how, but I think it's through their water balance. They can monitor the flow in and out and reservoir levels pretty well.
I think it's a concern that UC Davis is pursuing, and also UC Merced. They've come up with some great solutions on those larger canals.
Yeah, reservoirs, they evaporate, they seep. There it goes to the environment.
Any more questions for Glenn? Okay, I think this is informational only, so we really appreciate this.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn. Good. That's great, a little can of water. Kind of like if the dog goes, you're like, oh, this water's gone. Okay, all right, so moving on then, we have staff reports.
Okay, I'll go first. So on 9/28, we had a finance committee. We discussed a little bit about solar, and we'll be providing the board some more information on solar here in the coming meetings. On 10/4, although I was remote, I participated in a planning discussion for Phoenix Lake. Again, trying to build some information for the watershed committee. That's going pretty well. On FYI, on 10/5, the Natural Resources Committee meeting was canceled. I'm not sure why. Again, on 10/10, yesterday, we had another follow-up discussion on the Phoenix Lake preservation and restoration planning discussion. We're kind of buttoning up a presentation that we're going to provide to the watershed committee coming up. Looking forward to that. It's going to be very productive. I hope to be a very productive and enlightening discussion for our planning purposes moving forward. And then lastly, today, we will be releasing a press release on PG&E's announcement of their Pacific Generation LLC. I think you all know, but although they made a very public announcement to the entire public, I personally got an email from Mike Schoenherr ahead of time letting us know that this was going to happen, that it was really not going to have any impact on our future discussions with the acquisition of their assets. So anyway, we're going to set out a press release today.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Staff, some more?
I don't have a report today.
I'll just briefly let the board know, last week you should have received an email. We released for public comment the secret document for the Zone 4 tank. You might recall when we lost the Zone 3 tank, and with the land acquisition, the board adopted for the replacement to the White Fir tank up in Miwok. We're going to be constructing on a new site a tank that will consolidate Zone 3 and White Fir into one new tank. And this secret document is out for the 30-day comment period, and we would like to bring it back to the board December 13th for a public hearing. And then on Saturday in the morning, we have our tour at the regional wastewater treatment plant.
I don't have anything to report.
Thank you.
27th to the Tuolumne County Fire Safe Council meeting, just got an update on their upcoming projects, where they're at, where they're going there. The 28th Tuolumne County Fire Advisory Committee meeting. EN2 presented the projects we're thinking about, or the grant application that we're looking at getting for run ditch systems. So that was good. There on the 29th, we went to Abby, myself and Emily went to the FEMA class. Just to see what it was about and what was learned. It was really geared toward the county and housing and different steps that you do before, during, and after any incident. So we did get some good things out of it, especially with our mutual assistance agreements that we're looking at getting into. So that's good. That's all I have. Oh, and the ditch challenge coming 16th through the 23rd.
Thank you. Abby, anything?
No, nothing to report.
Okay, great. Emily? Okay. So with that, we'll go into director's reports. Okay, Jim?
Report, I believe Don mentioned at the finance committee meeting, we had Director Boatwright and I were in attendance, and that was on September 28th. We'll be hearing about that later on too as well. That's it.
Thank you. Director Ringham.
Yeah, I attended that finance committee meeting also remotely as a stone, so it's already been covered.
Okay, Director Boatwright.
No reports at this time?
Okay, but you did attend the finance committee.
Yes.
Okay. Director Murphy, anything to report?
Yeah, I just came back from the statewide California Naturalist conference up in Tahoe, and we spent some time at the Tahoe Science Center, as well as some time with the Washoe tribe. And in both of those things, talking about drought and the effects on the forest up there. And they're trying to do a lot of cooperative prescription burns. And so seeing how that'll work with partnerships between the federal agencies and the local tribes up there. So it was pretty interesting stuff. And in 2 days, we have the yearly Hydroclimate workshop up in Yosemite. So I'll be going to that. Not sure, Glenn, if you'll be heading up for any of that or not, but it's a great opportunity to hear what current science is going on in the mostly focused on the Tuolumne River watershed, but it's very applicable to ours as well. So that's exciting stuff going on right now.
Great. Okay, yes, I listened in on the finance committee. That was, the solar discussion was, I thought, really appropriate at this time with climate change. I wanted to add, I worked on a project that was a big rain on snow event on the middle fork of the stand on the North Fork. And it also depends on the geology. We had an ash underlayer and it became thixotropics. In other words, it turned all gooey and it turned into ball bearings and it caused the whole thing to give way and plug up the whole North Fork of the Stanislaus River for a while until it blew through and changed the whole configuration of the river. So that was mind-boggling, the scale of that. And so the geology will factor in wherever we've got some under layers of ash that they can get super saturated. So it's gonna be a wild ride, I think. Let's see. I want to encourage everyone. Oh, we finalized for mountain counties. We finalized our strategic plan. We're going to run it up the flagpole on the 20th when we have a meeting in Murphy's with everybody. And again, that's the joint meeting with Aqua. I was really pleased to see we have some board members that have signed up for that and staff as well. So I really appreciate staff. It's always good when we go to the same thing at the same time and we get the same information. Seems like it doesn't work so good when directors are all excited and dump a bunch of cards on your table and go, oh, pursue this, you know. So this is great to be in real time and you guys, you know, make those invaluable connections. So Dawn, I appreciate your leadership in empowering staff to go to these things. And it's right in our backyard also. So the strategic plan, once we approve that, I want to pass that out because I think it's a really good example. It's just a couple pages long, but it is actually what board direction, in my opinion, looks like. So I think it'll be a good example on it, you know, for a different agency with probably a slightly different mission. Let's see, so that's going to be on the 20th and the 21st in Murphy's. And I want to thank Emily for that article on Pinecrest Reservoir. I think that just getting out did you know the history of these things? And of course, when you walk behind Pinecrest, there's actually remnants of the log crib dam. And I just felt like that was really great to kind of one at a time, not bombard our folks about where our water comes from. So that was really great. And the last thing I want to add is I hiked last week up to Herring Creek Reservoir, and it's full and it's beautiful, and it just shows that how our watershed really works. It was just to the brim, and of course that's also an historic reservoir. It was built in the 1850s. So I would really encourage everybody to go hike up there. It's a beautiful day, and there's an old historic rock wall and berm and the whole thing. So it's something that is right in our backyard. And with that, I think that's all I think that's it. Yeah.
I guess Melissa has laryngitis and she wanted me to make sure I remind you all that we have a watershed committee meeting tomorrow.
Okay, great, yes. Yes. And that's Director Reagan and Director Murphy.
That's correct.
Okay. So with that, we will close our meeting for right now, and we will convene into closed session. And Melissa, will you please read our closed session item?
Okay, item A, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, position general manager.
And do we meet in the conference room or do?
Breakout session, love a breakout.
Yeah.
Breakout.
We're staying here.
Stay here.
Yeah, we were gonna stay in this room.
Thank you, bye-bye.
There you go.
Okay, so I'd like to reconvene into open session and report that there is no reportable action. And with that, that concludes our October 11th, 2022 meeting. Thank you.
Great.
Adjourned.
See you, Lisa.